And welcome everybody to the WORT Board of Directors meeting for November 16th, 2022. We're coming up on the birthday party, which is the 47th birthday for WORT. So that's in Doug's thing. Amber, I just sent you an email. You have different Google personas or identities, and Google doesn't know about the other one. The WORT-FM doesn't. You're muted, so thank you. Marty, no Marty yet. I called the meeting to order. The agenda has been in the drive, and if there are no additions or corrections, we can assume. We will assume that that's approved. Very good. The draft minutes were in the folder. If there are no objections, we will assume that the last month's minutes have been approved. I'm going to check my email. Oh, that's just a different notice.
Can I ask one question, Dave?
Sure.
I can't tell from the agenda, is there any, unless it's under new business, which I guess people would bring up at the meeting, is this the meeting to decide whether DEI becomes a work group or a committee, or is that postponed till some other date?
That motion is not before us, or no change has, as far as I know, in that status. Okay, so unless somebody brings it up.
Oh, okay. So it could be at this meeting. Got it.
Yes, it could be brought up, but it's not on the agenda.
Thank you.
And can we remind the body what the current status is?
Currently it is a work group, and there has been debate in the last meeting of the work group about whether it should be a work group or committee. There are good points for both statuses, and it may be that we have both, or a work group with some reporting and some public meetings, but that's theirs to figure out. So
do you anticipate are putting it on the agenda for and formally inviting? I mean, Susan has a very detailed statement in her report. I'm not sure if that's a statement of the body or her statement, but have we considered whether or not to bring this to a head? We're going to invite DEI, make it a formal item on the agenda, and really decide it once and for all after discussion with DEI.
So I am going to ask that there are several people here who are at that DEI meeting, including Laura and Kai and Susan and Rebecca and Amber.
I wasn't there.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Susan, just a few minutes before 7, put her notes from that meeting into the shared drive folder for this meeting, and I linked them to the agenda, so you can either find them at the agenda or in the drive.
I think the most salient part of that was that the work group did take a vote.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, yeah, but I meant whether or not the statement was a statement approved by, or was your personal, but that's fine. That's fine.
The statement was my personal, but yeah. In the notes, which I considered not to be they were official. Just notes. They weren't an official report to the board. I thought that was going to be done by someone else. So they're just the notes, but the notes reflect the fact that a vote was taken at the DEI work group, and the work group, which you can see it's way at the bottom. I'm sorry, you're getting a lot of just what was in the notes, was that we would like to remain a work group with the ability to do some public stuff, but basically that the meetings were private and the product of the DEI group was public until we become a little better organized and we get past the fact that we will be inviting people who have experienced issues around DEI to be basically, and giving testimony is too strong a word, but reporting their experiences, and we would like those to be able to remain private.
Was there anybody at the DEI meeting making the case for it to become a committee?
Laura and Amber.
Okay.
And
Amber is not official member.
sure, and also Elliot.
Okay.
I need to
I don't
make a
think
note.
Elliot was arguing for us to become a committee. I think there are aspects that Elliot agreed with and disagreed with.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to speak that strongly for Elliot. Elliot was more conflicted.
I think they abstained.
No, Laura abstained. Elliot voted no.
Okay.
But in talking to Elliot, they have concerns either way. So I wouldn't say they're necessarily in favor of a committee.
So are we going to put this on the agenda or not?
I agree with Stu. I'd rather have the whole DEI committee here.
Yeah, and I was going to say, according to what we had voted on, it looked like that wasn't going to be anything coming up soon. We wanted to establish some ground rules and things like that first, so it wasn't going to be an actual agenda voting to change it to committee at this time. And I think that there was only one out of the group of members that voted no.
It's just that there's an awful lot of discussion coming from one or two people here, and if we're going to fairly represent both sides of the issue, I think it needs to be a little more structured.
Hang on a second. Amber was next.
Yeah, it was my understanding from the executive committee that this was going to be discussed tonight, and I attended the DEI meeting with that understanding. The DEI work group seemed also to have that understanding. So I will be surprised if we don't have that conversation tonight. And I'm not quite sure, but it seems like a number of us have had the understanding that that conversation was going to happen this evening.
Can we add that to new business?
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Stu.
I appreciate Amber's point, but since it was not on the agenda, and I mean, it's a kind of a, it's been a lingering controversy. I would probably have it on the agenda as a noticed item before making a final board action. That'd be my personal preference.
So what prevented that from happening? If I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get ahead of Kai, but
I didn't make the.
I made the agenda. Kai, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I thought we at the beginning of the meetings we have the power to add items to the agenda. Like I don't see what the problem is adding into the agenda if that's something that we want to take up now, right?
We do.
Yeah, we can do that, right?
Yes.
If we so choose. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I think part of the concern might be that you guys did that in August with nobody from that present, and there's definitely people present now, but
I believe we did it in September.
Well, did the DEI think we were going to take it up tonight?
I kept pushing that it was a possibility at the DEI meeting. I said, if they're going to take it up, we need to have a vote on this.
Okay,
I was not sure you guys were going to take it up, but I said, if it happens, we need to vote on this before this gets in there. So we did take a formal vote about whether to remain as a work group or so. you know, I wish more people were present from DEI, but I think some of them didn't think that it actually was going to get voted on, but I feel comfortable if you guys want to make it part of the agenda.
Okay, Rebecca. You're
Oh,
muted.
I was just, yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. I was just going to reiterate basically what Susan just said, was that we did have a vote, and it was found that we would not be changing back to a committee by those members in, and that included a new member, which would be Laura. So based on the vote that we had in the actual work group, if we wanted to change it, the vote came back as keep it the way it is, meaning work group. So I'm not sure what you want to add to the agenda, but I just wanted to make sure that that part was in there, because Susan is correct in saying if it did come up, we wanted to make sure we had our stance on it, and that was what the stance result was not changing it just quite yet. So that's it.
Dean, do you have a further comment?
Yeah, I do. I appreciate the conversation, but I think we should stop it and decide if we're going to include this on it as an agenda item in new business, and either a yes or no. And then we'll continue this conversation when it comes up in the agenda, and then let's move on with our meeting. So should we put this on the agenda or not? Let's decide that, and then we can go from there.
Someone to make a motion to amend the agenda.
I don't think we need to do it with a motion.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah, because we just approved the agenda. So
Okay,
I'll move to amend the agenda by adding as a specific item of new business consideration of the status of DEI.
And I'll second that.
hang on while I catch up with things. Stu moved and Dean seconded.
Yeah.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Are there any abstentions? We will now discuss that under new business. Thank you. There were no communications from the public. Well, there was an email from Thistle asking if DEI was ready yet, and I said it's right now it's a working group, so I'll let her know if that changes. No executive committee actions since the last meeting. We were going to do the reopening thing as an executive committee thing, but it was close enough to this meeting that we decided to put it in this meeting, and so we'll get to that later. We have an item that's on the agenda of electing a new secretary. I don't think we're ready to do that yet. I've been doing private lobbying, but we have an election coming up, so we'll know when the election happens and the new board member comes on if that person is interested. So any discussion about secretarial position?
Well,
Here, go ahead.
Well, just that there's also a broader discussion of the membership on the executive committee, and there may be a suggestion to policies and bylaws to consider a bylaws amendment that would expand membership of the executive committee. But that's in the discussion stage. So if people have thoughts on that, feel free to share them.
I speaking of things that policies and bylaws should consider, I don't think we have an official policy about an affirmative action officer. And I don't know where our policies or bylaws or external government requirements require that. So when we if we so choose to have an affirmative action officer, an EEO officer, we need to describe to that person what their duties are, and that policy should state that. So
are you talking about which position you're talking about, or you're talking about both?
I'm just describing one thing. I've referred to it in two different ways.
They're two different positions. Okay, I've made a note of it. We will look into it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Laura.
Didn't Doug say that this was something the CPB required? I'm asking Doug, I guess.
I've been doing some digging, but I haven't been able to find anything about an EEO officer specifically. However, we've always had one in the past, because at the bottom of the form that's hanging in the hallway to file a complaint regarding harassment, it refers to reporting to the EEO officer, who right now is unnamed. And I believe that's as of Rosie Ray's departure.
So the EEO email address is now pointing at me. So if anybody does report something, it does come to me. So action will be taken, even though we don't have a formal officer on board. But we don't know what the duties and responsibilities and authority that office has. So having one without any description of what they do or what their authority is not very helpful.
Can I just, because I've been looking into this, Dave?
I would love to hear from you, Susan.
What we call EEO officer here, that's an official title, and it requires a business to have 100 or more employees, or be a business that let me see what the having to do with federal agencies and stuff. We don't technically have to have one. And I think we've used the word EEO officer interchangeably with someone who handles complaints having to do with discrimination and other things. We've adopted that word when it doesn't necessarily have to be that, or encompass all the things a real EEO officer does, which involves training and a bunch of other things. So I think if I were doing this, I would change our word from using the EEO officer, which has a legal meaning, and make that the person that, we come up with a word to describe someone who is handling complaints and working to maintain an environment free of discrimination and stuff. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't think we've ever had someone act as a true EEO officer. It's just the word we've used as the point person, as far as what I've looked into.
Thank you. Is that, I'm assuming that's in the Code of Federal Regulations somewhere, so.
Yeah, I can send it, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. The other thing we could do is point that to the Personnel Committee, if people would be more comfortable with that. I mean, I would pretty much, since I'm that person now, I would be happy to share that information with the Personnel Committee. So one of the concerns that some volunteers have had is that in terms of gender discrimination, people would be more comfortable reporting such to a female than a male. And I'm certainly all in support of that. I have no problem with that, but we have to figure out what we want to do with it. So further discussion.
Yeah, we create a DEI committee to work along with the DEI work group and make the chair of the DEI committee that person. Amber's nodding her head. Amber's on board with that.
Put it in the discussion in new business.
Okay.
Thank you. Further discussion. Moving on. I messed up and changed some things around that I shouldn't have, but anyway. Personnel committee has met, but has no report to the board.
No, I think we do.
Okay.
Our report is that we have begun having direct conversations with the parties involved in the grievance/appeal that was lodged, and we are proceeding with our inquiry and discussion, and hope to have action and a report at our next by the December meeting.
Thank
At least that's my take on where we're at, and I Dave or Amber can say yay or nay, but that's my take of where we're at.
I would ask, am I to assume that conversation with more specifics would be held in closed session?
We don't have anything to report yet, so.
Well, no, but yeah, but no, that's a reasonable question. I assume so. Yeah, it would meet. Yes.
Thank you.
I'd move that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm confused. Are you saying that we're going to add a closed session today's meeting to discuss?
No,
yeah,
Dave. I meant in the future when a resolution is found.
Okay, yep. Thank you. The Technology and Facilities Director report did not have any action items. And the Engineering Committee notes did not have any action items. I was at the Engineering Committee meeting, and we had a long meeting, and we talked about the audio over IP project and getting real serious now about describing what the project is and outlining it. And once we get an idea of the tasks, then we start to put dates on things. We have this fantasy that we'll be able to have this working in August, but that's just a pin in a map sort of date. But audio over IP is going to essentially replace the boards, the consoles in Combo A and Combo B, and all the facilities behind the scenes that make that work. Stu, go ahead. Well,
Finish your discussion about this, then they have a large appointment. Finish your discussion about this, your report on this.
Okay. So we're going to continue the planning phase right now. So I mean, in the next few weeks. So that's pretty much it. So go ahead, Stu.
Did you intentionally skip over the approval of the budget in the Finance Committee notes?
No, I didn't. I was looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah, I thought, did he say finance report?
I did not do that. Thank you, Stu. Hi, would you like to talk about what happened in the Finance Committee and talk about your treasurer's notes?
Yes, there are 2 items that are up for discussion that are submitted from the Finance Committee, referred to the board to take action on. First one is more of like a footnote to the larger item, but that would be for Sybil's item in her budget for her to just submit a list of duties and like a general description of what her music assistant would be, or maybe that's not the right word, like intern contractor would be. And that feeds into the larger item of approval of the proposed 2023 budget. So if we would like to discuss.
So I thought that was just guidance for Sybil to include that to us, but the board doesn't have to do anything in regards to those duties at this meeting, right?
I just listed, no, I just listed it in the report because I thought
Okay.
that those were action items. Yeah, I guess the board, it's not the board's action item, but yeah.
Okay, yep. Do you want to describe the budget situation, Kai, or, well, I'd appreciate it if you would, if you don't mind.
Could you?
Let me ask Doug, because Doug is the person who prepared the budget, and
I knew this was coming. Yeah.
I don't want to be the person who speaks about it when there are other people here.
That's okay. Let me put my glasses on. Unfortunately, I printed out the entire budget. I am unmuted, right?
Yes.
I'm in the car, so like I'm in my mobile office.
Yes.
So fortunately, I printed out the entire budget. But like the main area of focus for the board as a whole is the first PDF that was sent, which is the planning summary. This is where you will see the 2023 budget numbers on the left for total expenses that includes all departments. If you want to get a little further into the weeds, the next two are the income and expense by department, where each of those income and expense items are broken down by department. So there really are no big surprises here. I think the notes that were sent out along with them provide a pretty good synopsis of the big thing, some of the engineering and facilities improvements that we're looking forward to making. One note is audio over IP is not included in this budget. That was an expense that was approved in December of 2021 with funds coming from our reserve funds. So there will be a separate budget with line items for expenditures for that project on its own. And I would assume the same would happen for any future mural project that happens as well, which
That's
would
correct.
include grant funding and things like that. So as you can see, we have a total expense of, it looks like $929. So we're getting up there. It's a balanced budget with $579 left over, and that is with $4,000 going to reserve. It's like a little cushion we put in there every month. Does anyone have any questions on any particulars?
And you and Susan are both comfortable with the level of income that you are to generate?
Well, yeah, I believe both are optimistic, but at the same time, the trends have definitely lent themselves to these increases. I know underwriting, for instance, saw a $20,000 increase this year. And businesses are definitely rebounding. I know Susan has some really big plans for next year for extra sources of income as well. And with the usual increases in like especially the evergreens continuing to rise, that is a trend we haven't seen slowing down yet. There is concern about number of new donors, although we still get new donors. But both of us feel confident in these numbers.
the benefits, you're going from 39 to 64. What are they
That's because bar benefits are just now coming back, and we actually have 4 different ones before the end of the year. With the addition of WORT-stock income increasing over what we had expected for this year. The birthday bash, we are already talking to Steve Sperling about the Barrymore. We just need to plan it earlier in the year. Like, we're going to start the conversation in July to really increase the revenue of that. I've already been talking to Shali about doing a book event, which has always done really well. The bowling event is increasing in popularity. So like on every front, events have been getting more and more profitable.
And what had we budgeted for this year in that line?
What was missing was, oh, here, I can look at it right
Is that in this
here.
packet?
Yeah, it's right on the front page because the where the heck is
It's got the actual. It's got the 20.
The 2022 budget was, oh boy, this is really small in this printout. 49.9.
Okay.
Flavor.
So
yeah, and that's gross income of 49.9.
I'm sorry?
That's gross income of 49.9. There's also benefits expense up at the top, which is all the stuff we have to pay for.
Right, but okay, but you're going to come in at 39. And so
no, currently 64.
Okay.
64 in income, and what is the expense? Oh, there it is, right at the bottom. With expenses of 24.8.
Okay, but doesn't the 49 relate to what on this document is 39? Isn't that the same number?
Which 49? The 49,000?
Didn't you say you said benefits income for the budget we're finishing was 49, right?
Actual was 39, but that also was a 12-month period, which didn't include a lot of the benefit income, which came later last year.
Okay.
Because that was like still having the effects of COVID, and a lot of that was like dead as far as events were going.
Okay.
So that's why that number came in under budget. Fortunately, the underwriting is coming in over.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
As is CPB.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of that COVID deficit in benefits and program underwriting was more than made up by the extra grants we received from CPB. And it's just fortunate that now that extra grant money isn't coming in, the benefits and underwriting are rebounding.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, would you let us know what the status is of the CPB payment?
Oh, we just received it, which is the first chunk of our 2023 money. It's about $67,000. We saw an increase this year in the grant of about $3,000 or $4,000.
Cool, which is good.
Yeah, and then we'll receive the second half of the payment once I complete the annual financial report, which is contingent on completing the 990, which is contingent upon completing the audit. So that's spring.
Yeah.
I would like to
questions on the budget.
I would like to kind of respond to Stu, who I think was asking both of us how we
Since
feel.
you're on the call, please do, Susan.
I think what I discussed, if I think I remember this correctly, is that I definitely feel yeah, we're getting new donors every year, but not at the rate that I believe we're losing them. Because I'm the person that's going through the obituaries and taking people off of the donor thing. So I'm seeing every week the donors that we're losing that are just published in the paper. And I don't believe it's keeping up with the new donors. So I did want to say that in the finance committee meeting, I committed to these numbers, but I very much said, I do not believe I will be able to hit the numbers the year afterwards, these same numbers. I'm very concerned that we are reaching the point where I am basically doing every single thing possible to get the money that we can get. There still are other things I can be doing, but there's so many hours. Part of that, you'll see that I've asked Karen to have more hours to next year, and that's to make this possible, basically, is that we need to add more people working just to get this. And I'm very concerned that by passing this budget, people think that somehow the year after this, it's magically going to increase by that much again. And I don't see that. I just want it to be sounding, whether I'm here or not the year after next year, I believe it will be a real struggle to maintain this budget, to maintain the income from this department. So yes, I feel comfortable that I can do it next year. I am extremely doubtful that I could do it the year after.
Stu?
Susan, which would be a more immediate, which would be a better strategy to upgrade our pursuit of new donors or to work more on estate planning?
Estate planning. At this point, it's estate planning.
Okay, so what do you need to do that?
That's the fundraising group. That's our starting at the beginning of next year. That is going to be a huge push. The one additional goal I'm taking on, in addition to all the other ones that I've had in the past, is we are going to get a pamphlet out. We are going to push it on social media, where it's going to be part of letters going out to people. And I'm interested in possibly adding a free will page to our website, which will look like our website, but be tied to free will, where people can do their wills right on our website. And the suggestion is that when they do it, and this is a really, I look into it, Stu, it's really well regarded free will. It's not some,
Yeah. No, I know.
Thing. But anyway, when you do that on your website, it costs money. You can also put free will on there just as a place where people can go to do their wills for free. The thing about having it on your website is it automatically suggests a donation to WORT as part of your estate planning. So that was something that I wanted to bring up. I've already talked to them. They are just overwhelmed because they've now agreed to go into the cryptocurrency market and provide cryptocurrency stuff for existing businesses and stuff, and they're going to be doing that for free, and that just opened the floodgates, and I've had difficulty getting a meeting scheduled with them, but I sincerely believe they would be a good choice for us right now. I understand that they're at $12,000 a year for you to have your website contain a page that is actually their page, but would look like ours. On the other hand, I've talked to right now, I've got 6 organizations that were about our size that they gave me, and I contacted them, and they said in the first year they brought in over $48,000. So they felt like the cost was more than worth it. And I didn't get it in the budget because I felt like not being able to speak to them more directly wasn't worth it, but it probably will come up next year as if I make the decision that we will make more than what it cost, as a motion to the board to allow me to do that.
Well, if you want examples of pamphlets, I've been getting plenty lately, so I will.
Sure, I'd love to see them.
All the old people get these.
I would like to split this discussion into 2 pieces. One piece is approval of this budget for 2023, and the other is beyond 2023 fundraising issues. So
So yes, yes, I feel comfortable that I can make these numbers, especially with the approval of Karen's expanded hours, which are part of the budget to expand her hours.
Very good. Thank you. Dean.
Yeah, David, thank you for that. With Susan's and others' cautionary comments that the board will have to take it under advisement and have some discussions, serious agenda items around these issues in the next meeting and future meetings. I don't know how far we can get on a discussion of that today, but for today, I would move that we approve the proposed 2023 budget.
The finance committee already moved.
Oh, okay, so then
Doesn't
I
actually
would just
need one.
call a
It comes-
question, then I'd call.
Yeah, if it comes from a committee, it doesn't need a motion.
Right.
I
I'd call-
actually didn't know that.
Yeah,
I thought-
actually
okay.
works, yeah. I call a question.
Are there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the 2023 budget as given to us by the staff, say aye or raise your hands. Aye.
Now, David, I'd like to, the other questions that were,
I haven't asked for opposed yet. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Okay. Go ahead, Dean.
yeah, I'm not sure I would like to open up the meeting to suggestions on how to address fundraising concerns today. I would like to have it agendized so that we can prepare better and perhaps have the finance committee have this on their agenda of their next meeting prior to the meeting where they could, and then Susan's committee or Susan's department could lay out some proposals around the things that she mentioned. And then we could have, and then the rest of us could also do our own little thinking and research on it. And then we would have, I think, a little bit more informed discussion that would be able to move more efficiently. So I think the fact that we don't have to address this today, but next year's budget, and then begin planning for it, suggests that we formalize it a little bit more, ask some committees to make some suggestions and discuss it, and then have a better informed meeting, a discussion on it at a next, even at our, let's put it on our next meeting, then we can see where we go by next year's budget development.
I could agree with that, Dean. Would you mind re-summarizing the first quarter of your statement? So kind of directing a conversation about future fundraising methods, opportunities, something like that.
Yes, Kai, you're on the right track. Doug and Laura both probably can, and everyone else is probably going to be able to clarify what I was saying better. So go.
Improve fundraising operations. Does that sound on the beat?
I'm not quite sure yet. Let's hear more discussion first. Laura?
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking that I don't see this as a board, an activity that the board necessarily needs to get involved in. If there are board members that want to enter into this discussion, I think they should attend the finance committee or the where these things are discussed, and then we can maybe discuss, but I don't think that the direction on this has to necessarily come from the board. They can ask approval for what comes back from the committee. Am I off base here?
There's more people who want to discuss, so let's continue discussion before we decide what we're going to do. Doug was next.
I was going to say exactly what Laura just said, that I feel that Susan has a good handle on this. She has a fundraising work group that is specifically targeted toward this. And I would also say any board members interested, contact Susan about joining that work group. That's it.
Stu?
Dean's right that we should have separated the discussion of the future from what we just did. Laura and Doug are right that this is not a board matter at this time. This is what we pay Susan for, to make a recommendation and take it to her committee and then bring it to the board.
All right.
No
action needed here. We're not taking an action.
Orders of the day, Mr. Chairman, orders of the day. Next agenda item.
Thank you, Susan and Doug, for your report, and Kai.
Yeah, Kai. Yeah, thank you, Kai.
Thank you all for approving the 2023 budget. Approval of a budget is a significant milestone. And in past years, WORT has spent 2 or 3 hours arguing about budgets. So I think it says a lot about the quality of the budget that the staff and Doug put together, that they worked so hard to make it balanced and to put some money aside. And so I think they did an excellent job. And
Here.
Yep.
I think we did great. So there were the next report that has action items. Boy, my mind is just mush tonight. Is to approve the staff proposed updated guest policy. That policy was sent out to all of us, and then we reminded people that the board needs to approve that before it can be official. And Stu has an amendment or a change that he'd like to suggest.
Yeah, I thought I sent it out again.
You sent it out tonight.
Yeah, I'm not. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I would like the bit about the phrase to read, "You must keep the door locked at all times and not give out the WORT door codes to anyone, period. Volunteers who violate this are subject to discipline up to and including suspension or termination of volunteer status." The way it's currently drafted, part of it is sort of hanging out. I'm trying to get that document in front of me. And I just think this is a better way to phrase it. And I thought that that's what the minutes of the committee indicated the intent was. So I'd like to see that language.
Yeah,
Doug has his hand up, so.
I'd like to respond to that. Just that the original email said something like this language.
Okay.
So since staff put forward the proposal as a staff motion, I would agree to that friendly amendment.
Thank you.
And change the language to as proposed by Stu.
Yeah.
Further discussion.
And this is good. This is another big step.
Yeah, and if I may speak just a little bit to it, we are already allowing guests. We're allowing a guest after 8 p.m. as it stands, single guests. We are allowing exceptions to the rule if people ask during the day. It's just the number of those requests has become a huge burden on both Sybil and Shali. So really what we're doing is just removing that barrier and putting the responsibility of the guest participation on those hosts and engineers who are responsible for the shows.
Yeah, but I mean, institutionally, it's a big step in the history of the pandemic that we're formally doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been, looking at Dane County public health numbers very closely. And we have been seeing a consistent drop in the number of new cases, especially over the last few months. So it's very encouraging.
Boy, I don't have the. I'm trying to find the doc. Do we have something in the language about subject to review if conditions warrant? Is that in there somewhere?
I was pretty sure it was because
Okay.
all of these are contingent upon
Yes.
condition.
Yes, I remember seeing that.
Okay, okay. I can't find the document right now. Okay. Where the heck did it go?
So Doug, when staff and you modified that document to include Stu's language, would you send a copy of the final to the board as well?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I can do that first thing in the morning.
Oh, okay.
Laura's giant hand.
Okay, I'm looking at it. There is not that explicit statement about this is subject to further review to reflect changed conditions. Do we want to have such a sentence on this page?
Ooh, I think that would be a good idea, Stu. Nice catch.
Okay.
And I believe it was on the previous policy. What we could do is add the same exact language that we had
Yeah.
on the previous policy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking again, but okay.
It must be in the staff meeting notes where I'm remembering that language
Okay.
and not in the actual document. But I think staff all agrees that should be added.
Okay. Then I'd move this with those two amendments.
Second.
I'm not going to call them two separate amendments, two changes.
Right.
And thank you for that affirmation, Adrian. It's in the chat in case anyone didn't see it.
Oh, okay. Further discussion or can we vote?
Well, Adrian, are you going to put out a blast on this as soon as we vote?
Tomorrow, Doug said.
Tomorrow's fine. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, I will be sending it out tomorrow. Technically, it's immediately in effect, but I'll be sending it out as a vol announced tomorrow. It will also be in the newsletter, which comes out this Saturday.
Cool. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Where does this get posted or published? I mean, what is this a part of? Is it a policy? I mean, just where does it get posted?
In addition to going out by volunteer email, it's also posted at several locations in the station, including the bathrooms, the volunteer board, the front by the receptionist desk. And I usually do that poll at the top of the stairs too, so that everyone is sure to see it.
I'd like to also, when it's published, stick it in with the minutes or the items for the November meeting. So. And
another thing is we could stuff flyers in mailboxes as well.
Put it on the website.
Well, that's what I mean is on the website where the minutes are posted.
No, not where the minutes are published as a banner, Ward Open Station to guests, and not an appendix to the minutes, but an actual.
Not buried 17 layers deep,
Right,
you mean,
right.
Nobody sees it?
An actual public statement about it.
I think that's a good idea too. Well, I'll send that out to staff tomorrow, see if what everybody else thinks, but yeah, I like that idea.
Okay, thank you.
I think that what Stu is trying to say is that it's sort of a positive statement going forward that change is happening and things are improving. So. All right.
We haven't voted yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was just shooting ahead here.
That's what I'm here for.
I appreciate that. All in favor of this proposed policy change, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Are there any abstentions? All righty. I've got two screens, and so I have to wiggle my mouse around to try to find it. And the other thing that Doug had as an action item is join us at the WORT 47th Annual Birthday Bash, Sunday, December 11th, 7 p.m. at the Burr Oak at 2262 Winnebago Street, which is just a couple blocks down from where the original WORT used to be. Where the
And
old
there's-
schoolhouse used to. What's that?
And there's cake. And I don't know if everybody knows, but the first day in the periodicals, one of the members is a former board member, Alita Lacoste. And then the second group is the Dem Tesfaye and his band. So it is going to be a very danceable night. So put on your dancing shoes.
Well, that's cool. That sounds like a great thing. Now, I'm quickly looking at Aaron's report, and I don't see any action items for the quick scan here. Good. Okay, I think we're good there.
I took the liberty of thanking Buzz Kemper for his help on the Family Feud and reflecting Aaron's comments.
I did too. I went to him after the event was over and thanked him. We have history with Buzz, so
yeah.
I don't see any other action items. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think implicit in the DEI report is an action item.
Are we into new business yet?
Yeah, I'm confused. Is this part of new business or the DEI report?
Susan, you made these notes. Were there any action items in that in the DEI report to the board or in your notes?
Like I said, this wasn't meant to be a board report. It's just notes, but I guess if I were going to call it an action item, it would be that the work group voted as to what they would like to see, but I don't know that that amounts to an action item as far as being a work group or a committee.
We also brought in Laura as a new member, so I could see that as an action item.
Stu, go ahead.
Well, there is an action item. I mean, you took a vote and have reported it to the board, and the board will either say yay or nay. I mean, this is what we referred to later in the meeting. This, whether we call it new business or the DEI report, is kind of immaterial. The question is before us: is it going to be a committee or a work group? And when were these minutes loaded in? Because I didn't think I only saw these recently. These are really good minutes, and there obviously was a very comprehensive discussion at DEI about this.
The whole meeting was basically this.
Yeah, I mean,
we silently approved Laura as a member by just mind vote. That was one action we took when we realized we came to a vote and we hadn't formally said, of course, you're a member, but the other part of it was a discussion of this. We had a lengthy agenda, and the only item we got to was this discussion and adopting Laura as a member.
Well, we've got advocates from both sides here. We've got a majority of the committee of the DEI here. I think we invite them to have the discussion again, and then we discuss it and say what we want to do. But now's the time to do that.
Laura.
Thank you. First of all, we spent a lot of time at the meeting talking about ourselves, introducing ourselves to the rest of the membership. And then it's my recollection that in the last 15 minutes is when Susan brought up a motion, and that's what we voted on at the end. But and that really was the only item of business that we accomplished at the DEI meeting. But I was trying to make the case first of all, I think that the motion that the DEI work group should remain as a work group for the foreseeable future, with plans to hold public listening sessions and other outreaches necessary to DEI work, it was passed, but it's kind of moot because the board has already passed a motion saying that it is a work group. So as it stands now, the DEI group is a work group. It's not a committee anymore. And that will be in effect until the board changes its mind on that. I did not put in any motion or any action item regarding changing it back, because at this point, I don't think that it's going to be sustained. So, but I would like to make the case that I still believe that this is a function that needs to be public, that there are opportunities and options for having closed sessions if necessary. I think that the public side of the group can be, that there can be both public and more inwardly facing meetings. I can see that some discussion groups, some training sessions, we would want to limit the number of people involved. We might want to have certain groups who become more familiar with one another, and are more able to discuss the sensitive topics that might arise. That we might limit those groups, somewhat closing them off to the public. That kind of thing happens. But I think that when we're setting our goals and our strategies, when we're asking for community input, when we're setting timelines, and when we're making announcements about the progress we might make, I think that that's important to be public facing. So, I still think that ultimately DEI should be a committee, should have publicly posted meetings, and should welcome participation from the public. I know that is uncomfortable for a number of the members. They express that pretty clearly. But another reason, it was suggested that the EEO officer should be the chairman of this committee. Well, it's not a committee. So if it's a work group and somewhat less than official, having that EEO officer come from this work group, I just think that that's that just doesn't fit, that, you know, an EEO officer should be part of a standing committee or a committee. So anyways, the one thing that kind of got me was the foreseeable future. That was you know, the language that was used in the motion that Susan proposed and which was passed. I mean, what is the foreseeable future? When do we revisit this? I would like to see it sooner than later. So maybe, you know, get through with the work that we need to do behind closed doors, and then try to throw this, try to open it up to a more transparent group. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Other discussion? Rebecca?
Yeah, so some of the things, just to reiterate kind of what Laura said, was just important to point out. So I know that she had suggested during the meeting that it's important for us to establish some ground rules, so to speak, when we do open up results or discussions with the public. So those types of things, as she mentioned, you know, would make sense to do in a meeting type setting. Whereas then we would have the option then to say, hey, we're going to be having a public meeting where we can actually receive feedback from the community. So the only way to do that is to keep it a work group, which does make most sense, which is why, you know, it was stated the way it was and it was voted to keep it that way. So I think that ultimately that really is just kind of bottom line what stands for now, just so that everything can get, ground rules can get established. How often do we want to make sure that we include the public on, hey, this is what we're looking at. We'd like your opinion too, and bring them in, but then also reserve space to have the meetings to say, hey, let's unpack what we've received from our listeners and see how we can do this the best way. But if it's a committee, you don't get that choice. But if you, or that option, I should say, but if you do keep it as a work group, then you can have a little bit more flexibility to establish those things that we really do need. So it seemed like that was the understanding and why it was voted for when we were in the meeting. I think the EEO portion is probably separate from this. So I think that's probably a different thing. Like not all inclusive in the one, like work group, committee, and EEO are two different topics. But yeah, so just to point that out, that in order to be able to actually do the things that Laura was saying would probably work, it would the only way we could do that is if it was a work group. So and then, but keeping in mind, we want that language to show that it doesn't have to stay a work group. But for now, to establish this, to get these meetings going, to say, hey, what are we looking like? That's where it would go. But then, like she said, foreseeable future, it's just that there isn't a time frame. It's not like things can get done by January 13th or like a specified date. So that was just kind of the language that we threw in there. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Stu, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I really respect the strong opinions that members of DEI have on this and the argument they make. Institutionally and structurally, we went at this backwards. What we should have done was create a committee, which then would have created a work group to do this kind of outreach separate from the other subjects that the committee is looking at in terms of the bigger picture of designing the whole program. So I do not have the language right now on what the charge to the committee would be, but I'm going to move to create a DEI committee to coordinate the DEI activities of the station, including coordinating with the existing DEI work group, period. And then at a subsequent meeting, we will more fully define what those actual duties of the DEI committee are. But I think structurally, that's what we need, a DEI committee and a separate work group. And then there are further implications from that, but that's what I think we should do.
Susan, you're not a board member, but you have your hand up. Would you like to say something?
Am I off of mute? It's so hard for me to keep track.
You're off of mute.
I guess what I want to say is that I've been a part of the DEI meetings of the NFCB, the regular monthly meetings, for quite some time. I've been in touch with many of the stations who began their DEI work and are continuing their DEI work. We are at the very beginning. We started a DEI group, and Dan and Glenn spent about a year trying to teach us the logic model, which most of us resisted because we couldn't do a damn thing about anything having to do with DEI until we mastered this logic model. So for those of us who have been along, where there was no organization, there was no attempt to do anything, then we had a lot of turnover where Rosie and several members of the board who were part of DEI and kind of driving it all quit the board. And now we're kind of reconstituting ourselves. And, you know, the first thing that I had been pushing for a long time was to get a study out there that gave us a look at on many different axes. What does our representation look like compared to the census, which is the number one thing that most DEI work recommends that you start with, is just the simple concept of representation. I have been in touch with Lisa, and I did include this information to the DEI work group. Lisa's the head of programming at NFCB. I've been in touch with several of the stations that are along in their DEI work. They say that as part of getting going with having a picture of what is happening at your organization is to invite people to speak privately to the DEI work group and help get a picture of what it is that is happening at the station. Many of them are still in task forces 2 years down the road. And Lisa's recommendation was that very few of them are official committees that are open to the public because of the sensitive nature of things as new topics come up. So maybe where the DEI is somehow going to talk about our hiring practices. And as new topics come up, that is something that people still can feel that they'd rather not share with the whole group. I know there are people who have left WORT who were part of a more diverse group who said nothing when they left, but who have, in general to the board, but have spoken privately about their deep concerns about how they were treated while they were here. And I just want to make sure that we hear from those people. I'm very concerned, but I do have a procedural question. If you are a committee and you want to go into a closed meeting, is there no requirement that you have to at some point say what happened in that closed meeting? In some way offer? My understanding was that closed meetings don't mean that you never find out what happened, that at some point you have to say, not identifying by a person, but say what happened in that meeting. And I'll stop. Stu, I would love to see a committee, but I would love to see us just have 2 months to help get a little more organized.
Susan, I don't think, I apparently did not communicate the intent of my motion well enough, because my intent was to create 2 separate structures to allow I said to work with the existing DEI work group. My motion was to allow the work group to continue to do the work that you believe to require sensitivity and confidentiality, while allowing an overarching committee to look at the bigger picture of what it is we want to do. But you're doing that investigative work and that information gathering work.
I guess I would feel that the committee would be better equipped to function as a committee with a little more input from the work group as to what we've discovered and what we think is necessary. That's all I'm saying, Stu.
Fine. Then my motion, I said I did not have the language on exactly what it was that the committee's charge would be, and perhaps that's the thing that the work group can help us with by suggesting that language. But I think institutionally, we need a committee to work with the work group.
I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying I would like the work group to have Like basically to me, the work group is at step one.
I
think we're on the same side. I'm not going to argue. I really do think we're on the same opinion.
I'm making notes. Please stand by.
Well, if I could, I think Laura was next in the queue.
Stand by. I'm trying to make notes. So I don't want anybody else talking because I get too far behind. Laura, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I've said a lot, so I'll try to make this brief. I just don't see where these two concepts are mutually exclusive. I just think it's possible to have a committee that can work in closed session. And from what I recall, when the board meets in closed session, that you talk about any actions that the board has taken, but you do not describe the discussions that occurred during those closed sessions.
That is correct, and that's according to CPB.
Yep.
So I don't think that that's too restrictive regarding what the DEI can do. So I like I say, it just doesn't strike me as these two concepts are totally exclusive. So
Okay,
I think we can
thank you.
work through this.
Stand by, Adrian. Rebecca has a comment.
Yeah, I think I was going to just reply to Stu and say that I like the idea of how one section is a work group, one section is a committee, because you don't have to turn those things off and on with a committee. Whereas the work group, we already exist. We already have a work group. So now the next step would be, like you said, trying to figure out what's the language to create that committee, and then also finding people to be on the committee. But it sounds like it makes sense to have kind of the two portions of it. Ultimately, you're going to have to do either work group or both, because once you have only committee, it locks you into only committee, and you don't have the same kind of flexibility to be able to build and have those meetings and things like the work group does. So yeah, I'm on board with Stu, which means that basically right now we would be remaining a work group, and then the committee portion would be a creation stemming off of that in the foreseeable future, as soon as we have some members or something like that with the language.
Thank you, Rebecca. Adrian, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Rebecca and Stu, because I think that the work group as it stands right now is not organized enough, and I don't think would be able to function in the best representation of WORT. And having a committee that works with us could give us that stability. I think that our work group is not fully there with yet. So that's why I'm in favor of this, rather than turning our work group as it stands into a committee, because we still have quite a few things to work out.
Thank you, Adrian. Stu's motion does not yet have a second. Does anybody wish to second it?
Yeah,
Amber, are you commenting?
I would like to comment, please. Yeah, somehow I don't see the place to raise my hand on this version of Zoom. So
okay.
Under reactions, Amber, it took me forever to find it.
Reactions.
Click
All right.
But I saw your hand, and that's
There you
that's
go.
a real physical thing, not a little.
The non-virtual hand.
That's right.
Yeah, so I appreciate the work that the work group is doing. My impression is, so my fundamental assumption is that DEI work is diffuse, and it needs to be integrated in all of the elements of an institution. And that's a lot for any one work group. So it seems to me that, expecting the work group to kind of take on that global project is asking too much of it. And as Susan says, this is at the, at the beginning process. So asking a work group to create a survey makes sense. Asking a work group to do all the things seems, kind of a setup, and also it doesn't give DEI the importance that I believe it should have institutionally. So I agree with Stu's assessment that I think the umbrella structure should be the DEI committee, and the committee can set up work groups for addressing various concerns or various projects at various times. Like Laura, I think that work should be public facing. One of the concerns I have had in listening to the conversation is both at the committee level and tonight and previously, is the idea that we can't be public facing because we're not ready. And I would respectfully submit that marginalized people throughout history, and particularly, the recent history of this country, have been told over and over and over, we're not ready. We're not ready to give women the vote. We're not ready to give queer people same-sex marriage. We're not ready to end desegregation. So as a person who's done this work, I've heard that a good number of times, and it always comes from people who are making decisions to protect themselves or keep themselves in their comfort zone. So the idea that it seems to me that whether we're ready or not, this work should have been getting done, decades ago. So that idea of we can't be public facing because we're not ready, it kind of begs the question of how is we're not ready different from those other institutions or organizations that have kept people out because they aren't ready. So that idea, I get it that it's uncomfortable, it's hard, we want to do things right, we don't want to expose ourselves to risk by being vulnerable. And at the same time, that's what power does. It writes the rules that keep people out. So that's why I'm in favor of establishing a public facing DEI committee that then can interface with and create and receive reports from or feedback from various work groups over the course of time.
Thank you. I see hands from Dean and Rebecca, and before I call on them, I would like to make a statement as the board president and as a longtime person with WORT. One of the things that WORT has meant to me is it's been a learning experience of when to listen and not speak. And so I'm not speaking on this because everybody else is doing such a good job. So I'm not going to add to it. Rebecca, I think I saw your hand first.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we add in a little bit of definition on the we're not ready, because it is important to understand language. The we're not ready isn't an uncomfortable thing. It doesn't stem from a place where we don't want to create change for people, or that we don't want to support, or that we're not ready to move forward. We're ready to move forward. What we mean by we're not ready is we need to, just as Laura stated when we were in the meeting, establish some ground rules on how we're going to do so. So we're not ready means that we're trying to get our tools together to move forward, we're not ready to do it. So I want to make that clear. But one thing that includes within this is a discussion that we had on having the members within these committees that would, someday be established here, or the work group that's already in standing, however you want to look at it, anyone in WORT, whoever wants to do it, is some training on how this language comes across. And I'll keep this brief, but I actually just completed this week, I completed a training from my job too, that was called trauma informed facilitation. And so things like that are what we are discussing on what kind of tools are out there so that when we are public facing, we can understand the best way to deliver that said meeting in a space where it makes people pick up on what we're saying in a matter of which you're getting both ends of the spectrum instead of just one statement saying, well, why aren't you ready to, you need to do this for these people. Exactly. And that's why we're here and that's what we're doing. But we want to make sure that we're doing it in such a way that is conscientious of that trauma, that oppression, that underrepresentation, and all of those things that was stated within that. So to define that we're not ready is a little bit more in depth of where we're trying to go with it, instead of just saying, hey, we just don't want to. We're trying to say, what are our tools? What can we do here? What kind of training can we get so that when we do open up to our public facing, we can say, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it and why we want your feedback, and then include the public in instead of keeping them out, but doing it respectfully. So I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Dean?
Yeah, hearing these conversations over the last couple of months, I saw merit in having the committee or the work group. And so I think Stu's hitting on the realization that we should have had both of them solves the problem there. Stu, the only question I would ask then is that the charge that this committee gets, do you feel comfortable with going ahead, setting up the committee without a clear charge right now?
Here's the language that I have so far, and right now it's the board creates a DEI committee to coordinate the station's activities to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion, comma, including working with a DEI work group to conduct sensitive discussions. The DEI chair shall serve as the station's agent for receiving complaints about harassment or discrimination. That's what I got so far.
Can you copy that into the chat? And then I can copy it out of the chat and put it in.
I think I have to, let's see, no, because I'm on different machines.
Okay.
Let me see what I can do. I may just have to type it in.
Well, that sounded pretty good, Stu. The only clarification someone might ask for is that last part where you.
That's not necessary for this. That's a suggestion that I think is a good idea.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
not
I
necessary,
like to
it's
hear
not necessary
others.
for this action. It's not
It
necessary for
sounds
this
like a
action.
good idea to me too. Would there be any objection to that from anyone? That I would like to hear if there is.
I guess my question would be, why not personnel committee, since they're already trained in those types of sensitive matters?
But we don't have the training in this particular field.
One of the things Pat talked
Aren't
about.
you dealing with an issue in this particular field right now?
I'm sorry?
But aren't you dealing with an issue like this right now
Yes, but
in personnel?
Yeah, it'll be better if it will probably help if we knew about that stuff. Yes. Good point.
there's a lot of discussion here, and it's getting kind of crazy.
But it just seems to me, it seems weird to shift the responsibility off of personnel when that already lies there. And it seems to me it would be smarter to make the point person for harassment claims to be a member of the personnel committee.
But are you saying that that have the personnel committee do the stuff that I'm proposing go to a DEI committee, or are you just saying that particular responsibility?
I'm saying that particular responsibility of reporting harassment claims.
Okay, yeah, we don't need to discuss that tonight. That's for the discussion about, yeah, absolutely. I'll take that out. Sure.
Stu is going to take a couple minutes to type it into the chat. And Laura, did you have a discussion item?
Basically, I wanted to say exactly what Stu is doing right now, and that is, let's separate the two. I don't think they at this point go together. And I'm noticing in the chat that not many people are interested in working with a DEI committee as opposed to the work group. And so I'm wondering who we're going to get to work on this committee and who, because it's going to take some work, it's going to take some training in order to handle issues with sensitivity. And I think it would help if we could recruit some more diverse membership. So yeah, it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Or this discussion is going to go long. Stu?
Well, Laura, I was hoping that you and Amber would certainly serve on the committee.
I will.
Thank you.
But that's not a committee.
What?
Oh, no,
it's not a committee.
But it's a good start.
Susan, you asked what is the hierarchy? They both report to the board.
But yes, in my taxonomy, the work group, the committee outranks the work group. Committee is going to coordinate. The work group is an important function of the committee, but the committee is a higher reporting authority than the work group in my taxonomy. Maybe other people disagree.
So if I'm hearing it right, and I just want to be sure that I get it right. If the work group wants to pursue something and the committee says, no, we want you to do this instead, the work group has to stop what they're doing and do what the committee directs them to do. Is that what you're picturing?
I was not envisioning that scenario arising, but that would be the logical conclusion of my earlier statement. Yeah. Oh.
Something wrong, Stu?
No, just need to plug in.
Okay. Other discussion?
No.
So, Stu, is that the language you want to put in your motion? The board creates
Yes.
a D. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. I missed the conditional clause. I'm sorry. Let me add that.
I want to make sure that we're clear on the language before.
No, I did not mean to.
Susan, the work group has not become a committee. The work group exists separately from the committee.
Once you say that the work group is under a committee, you're just, to me, you're saying DEI is now a committee and the work group is just one part of that committee.
So, and
so
is that a
to me,
problem?
I don't know. I'd have to see when we get into it. I feel like the committee members are familiar with what they want to see. The work group members are familiar and pretty united about what they want to see happen. I don't know what the committee is going to be. I don't know what the direction of committee members is going to be. So I don't know until it's created how that's going to interact with people that have put some kind of investment into this for a while and who have a list of things that they hope to address. And, in Rebecca's case, are bringing many things. And I'm kind of wondering why I went to the trouble of finding out what the NFC recommends and what current stations are doing the work, why they're all task force and work groups and not committees. And then we come back here, and to me, by making the work group kind of like, well, the hunting dog of the committee. That's basically the committee. I just don't see a difference when you say you're under the direction of the committee. What is the, the function of the work group is just to do some of the work of the committee then. And I don't know, I'm not clear, Stu, on what the other part of it would be, how it would run separately. I see that as being a problem of having two separate but equal organizations pursuing DEI work. I'm just saying I'm troubled that all of the people that are currently in the work group, besides Laura, who are attending this, have said, I'm only interested in being part of the work group. I think that says something. In the comment section, Rebecca, Adrian, myself have all said we're interested in the work group, not the committee.
I don't see a conflict. I think the way Stu laid it out, I don't see the potential conflict here. The likelihood of big power struggle happening, I think, is really low and probably non-existent. I just don't. I understand your concerns of people on the work group right now thinking that they're going to be told what to do, but I don't see that happening.
But that is the hierarchy, Dean.
Yes, but I think the charge that the work group has is acceptable, needed, warranted, and no one's going to interfere with it. And then at some point, a larger expansion will have to happen, which will mean we'll turn it over to public input and that. So you're almost there. Another 6 months, and you'll probably be there. And then the committee can pick it up from there and go forward in a public face of it. So I just don't see anyone, any committee member pulling their weight on you guys and say, stop what you're doing, do this now. I just don't see that happening.
I'd like to speak as president here in a second, Susan.
Sure.
One of the problems that I have here is getting people on the existing committees. And so to create a new committee is going to mean another committee that needs bodies. And I am reluctant to create another committee in that instance. Stu, go ahead.
I understand that the members of the work group don't want to serve on the committee, but I think the way to solve this is by creating the committee, appointing Laura and Amber to it, because I think Amber was sort of indicating an interest in doing that, and have most, if not all, of the members of the work group have it be constituted of the work group plus additional members from the board, but then the ones who are acting as the continuing work group will continue to do that as a committee of the committee or a subcommittee of the committee, because some of this I'll buy that some of the stuff that you're doing needs to be those private. Some of the stuff I don't think so. But I respect you enough that I'll go with what you think. But to have most of the existing work group be on the committee with new members and then continue to do that activity as a subgroup of the committee is the way it should be, is the way it can be solved.
So I have a question for Amber Alt, who made a comment in the chat about and Elliot. Do you mean and Elliot as a member of the committee or continuing as a member of the work group? That was unclear.
Yeah, Elliot was a dissenting voice during the work group conversation about this, and so I just want to make sure that there's not an overgeneralization about the unanimity of the work group. So
I'm not clear about what you just said.
Yeah, so when the work group met and it was put to them, should we remain a work group or not? Laura abstained. Elliot said no, so voted against it. The 2 staff members voted for it.
That's
And
fine. Okay. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you. So we have a motion before us with no second. we also-
Second. I second.
Can you repeat the motion for?
Yeah, let me see what he's. How the heck do I scroll up on this? The motion is to create a DEI, it's in the chat, coordinate a DEI committee to coordinate the station's efforts to enhance diversity, ensure equity, and promote inclusion, including working with the DEI work group to conduct sensitive discussions. And what I really think, and I mean, that's the motion. And what I certainly hope happens is that the work group will become the nucleus of the committee and then continue to operate as the work group on work group activities. Maybe it has a different name as a subcommittee, but that's what I hope happens.
And Dave seconded. Yeah.
I got
There's a
point
point
of
of discussion. There's a point of discussion from the chat. I'm seeing. I'll just repeat it from Rebecca. What is the time frame? Is this created immediately? Question mark.
Yes.
When we vote yes, if we vote yes, it's the committee would be immediately created. You don't explicitly state a relationship between the work group and the committee. You say that they work together, but does one have authority?
Well, we've got a number of members of the work group here. We got 3, I think. Would you agree to serve in a newly constituted committee, understanding that the work group would be transmogrified into a subcommittee of it to continue your work group activities?
So you're asking this of the work group people?
I'm asking this of the current members of the work group who have, according to Susan, according to the notes, indicated they would not so serve. And now that you understand the sense of what I'm trying to accomplish, would you serve under those conditions?
So in the notes, in the chat, Susan says no, Adrian and Rebecca say abstain. So.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand that at all.
Can I just jump in? So public facing discussions, we have to, just as Laura said, we have to establish some ground rules on what that looks like first before we can create a committee that's effective immediately. Because then we have to be on that same page as to saying, how is this lined up? Do we have an agenda? How do we frame that? What does this look like? And what topics are we taking out into the public? The meetings for the committee have to be published at a specific time. And then that schedule has to be published so that the public can attend. So I think what my biggest issue is that what we were trying to say is, if a committee is made, that is something that we'd see in the future. But as of right now, those are the things that the work group was trying to establish and discuss to get to that point so that it's the most effective. So my biggest issue is just like timing of it, to make sure that everyone then that is public facing then also has the same kind of platform or method, if you want, like layout of how it's best going to be delivered to the public facing audience.
Thank you, Rebecca. Kai and Susan, I see your hands raised. I will make a statement and then we'll go to Kai first. My statement is that if we want to postpone this decision, we vote no on Stu's motion, and then no action is taken place. So that's one way of dealing with it. And so I see 2 hands left. Kai, did you have a comment and then lowered your hand?
Oh yeah, I took it off because you called me, so I was just trying to remove the cue. Yeah, so I guess I kind of agree with Dave's point there. I was going to posture the suggestion of making a motion to defer this to the next meeting, and perhaps we can prioritize this as a board, because it doesn't need to be solely the members of that committee having this conversation. Maybe more voices and putting more energy towards this will create that work. I don't know if I think people here aren't exactly fans of using this board meeting time as a time to do work, but maybe that's what we need, or we could all, I don't know, make an extra effort to come to this next meeting and get things written down so we have the structure, because people want to make this happen. It just sounds like we're not ready yet. So if we put, like, it sounds to me like the solution is for us to put more attention towards this, make this a topic in the next agenda item for our next board meeting, and then we're putting forth the energy, and it will be coming very soon, I imagine.
I don't know who's next. I think Dean, you were there the longest.
Okay. I think procedurally, what we may be getting a little ahead of ourselves as far as the work committee feeling like they're going to be undermined and then have a new boss. But I think procedurally, what is practical and makes sense is that the work group continues doing what they're doing until they're ready to hand it off up to the committee to do the public work on it. So I don't see this committee doing much of anything except working with the work group to finish what they want to finish it and get it to the point where we move it up to the next level. That's how I see this in my head going forward. So the committee really isn't going to be reviewing the work group work at all until they're done and ready to move it up into the public phase of this work. So that's how I saw it working out, not undermining or trying to take over what the work group is doing. I would like them to continue doing and finish, and then we can take it to the next level under a committee structure. So that's how I see this going. And Dave, we shouldn't vote it down. We should either table it or do as Kai said, refer it to, if we're not ready to vote today. But I just wanted to make that point to
That's fine.
the work group that no one's going to take this over. Just keep working until it's ready to go to the public, and then it has to be a different phase. That's all.
There's a lot of hands raised, so we have to keep our comments short. Stu, you're next.
No, I was next. I was actually before Dean, if we're going by who raised their hand first.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, when you asked why, and I think your question, Stu, was why we were saying no and abstaining, and I think Dean has gotten to a lot of this with us. My problem was, if we were going to be under the committee, that I would be, in fact, serving on the committee and serving on the work group, felt like I was going to be asked to do two different things, adding on to the workload I already have as a work group member, but also having this additional responsibility of the committee. I don't want both of those. So, when under Dean's scenario, I actually am totally comfortable with what he's saying, that the work group get out there, get some ground rules laid, get some work done in stuff that I think is inward facing, and then turn it over to the committee, which I might be happy to be a part of at that point. I just don't want two different responsibilities, which I see as two different things if the committee were constituted right now. To me, there's two different things going on. But if we're going to do if it looked like what Dean said, that the work group continues for some time until they feel, and nobody's interested in, and at no point have I ever suggested we would be a work group forever. But when we say, okay, yeah, now we don't look like a disorganized mess, and now we figured out what needs to be private, and people who have asked to speak to us privately and not feel that they want to go public with what they've not gone public with before, when that happens, yes, we're a committee. And I don't see that as being 2 years in the future or anything like that. That's all.
Thank you. I'm making notes as the note taker. Stu,
Yeah, I have a substitute motion to create a DEI committee to coordinate the station's activities to enhance diversity, blah, 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 after receiving a report on the activities of the DEI work group.
So would that be at the next board meeting? I don't when.
Upon receipt of the report from the DEI work group, the DEI work group finishes its work, recommends the program, we create the committee. I'm doing what you want. I'm doing what you want.
No, I just don't understand the word report. We hand a report in every month. What do you mean by report?
Susan, I think I understand.
Okay.
I think what
the conclusion of your work.
Okay.
Yes, he's saying that we take the time we are requesting to put together our thoughts and to lay our ground rules, hand that off to the board, and then they will form their committee. That is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Amber.
So for me, it's been indeterminate what the real focus of the work group is. My understanding was it was working on a survey. So a survey is a really discrete project. Then I've also heard about like these listening sessions or collecting information that could go on for a really long time. Then there's the figuring out our ground rules. That's something different. And so I would propose that there be greater clarity about timelines for the work that the work group is doing, and a clear expectation about when whatever the work group sees as its current projects are would be delivered. So that there's some definition to what the work of the work group is, because again, DEI work is big, it's institution-wide, it's ongoing, it's not something that, you know, starts on one date and ends on another date in a general sense. There are projects, which is why I like the idea of there being a committee that has work groups, but it seems to me that there needs to be, if this is going to continue to be deferred, or if we're going to making a committee contingent upon, you know, some completion of work by the work group, that it be very clear exactly what projects the work group is working on and when the board can expect them to be completed or delivered. A committee could certainly establish whatever, you know, standards there are for having meetings. That shouldn't take us very long to do as a committee. And there are three of us here willing to be on the committee, which means willing to be part of the public facing group. So that allows the work group to do their projects without facing the anxiety of having, you know, public involvement. So again, I am in favor of establishing a committee and having one or more work groups be doing work in their private way, while the committee becomes the public face of the work and figures out, you know, a forward direction, taking into account information provided by the work group when it's got it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Adrian?
Thank you. So a lot of the things that Amber just mentioned came from our last meeting, talking about open facing sessions and ground rules for those sessions. And I think really what we're just asking is a little time to unpack that. We're not saying that, and you're right, DEI work it's ongoing. It involves everyone. I think we just need a little time. We're not asking for years or anything like that. We just want a little time to kind of unpack the things we have been working on, how we incorporate them into the new, the handoff to the committee when that is brought in. And I guess personally, I don't see anything wrong with giving us just a little time to do that with all these new ideas, which we are in full support of. So that's it.
Thank you. Laura? You're muted, Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that it's that we can ask the work group, and I speak as a member of that work group right now. I think that we can come up with a set of deliverables that maybe we can do that at our next meeting and bring them back to the board along with a timeline. And I don't think that that's beyond the realm of possibilities here. I also wanted to point out that the ground rules that I was talking about, I'm the one who brought up ground rules. I was thinking that these are not an overarching set of rules for the committee or for the work group, but were kind of ad hoc rules that would help people to feel more comfortable talking in some of these settings, and elicit some of the trust that we need to build in order to have these discussions. I'm not talking about top-down rules. These are rules that would be kind of developed by the individual groups. So I hope that people didn't misunderstand what I meant by ground rules when I brought it up, but it seems to be an idea that's really latched on to. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Further discussion? Stu?
Amber, would you want a time limit on the work group's activities and making providing its deliverables for the next step? Would that satisfy your concerns?
Yeah, my understanding was there was a description of the survey that it was good to go. It didn't really come up at the work group meeting. So yes, I mean, I would like for us to have a clear understanding of the work that the work group is setting for itself, and when it expects to wrap things up.
Okay, we got 4 members here. What's your sense? Are we talking February?
That's what I was going to suggest, just because the next time we meet, we would be, I know we have a little bit of discussion on some of the training options that we have, and then also to start looking at some of these ground rules, but then that's more of, obviously it's going to be a discussion. So whether or not we can knock it out in one meeting may or may not happen. So at least if we have at least 2 more meetings before we would have to come back and present, that would really be ideal.
Okay, I'd then put a report to the February board meeting directive to the work group as part of my motion.
Okay.
I don't know if I had a second for it.
I'll accept that as the second.
Dean had seconded previously. So
Okay.
Does your original language still hold? And then we just add a February board meeting deadline?
Yeah.
I think you might have amended it. So if you want to read the language you have one more time, just so that we're clear.
I have here The board creates a DEI committee to coordinate the station's effort to enhance diversity, ensure equity, and promote inclusion. The board creates a DEI committee to coordinate the station's, well, that's a duplicate.
Yeah.
I don't,
upon receipt of the DEI work group's report at the February board meeting.
So right now, are we a work group?
Yes,
Is there a committee?
it will be created in the February board meeting upon receipt of your report.
Got it.
Does that satisfy you?
Who you?
You know who you.
It shuts me up. Can we put it that way?
so, upon receipt of the DEI work group at the February board meeting. Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion, it has been moved and seconded to form a DEI committee in addition to the DEI work group, and that this will be done upon receipt of the DEI work group report at the February meeting.
Was there the language in there to work with instead of the hierarchy as well? I believe Stu had something in there. Just, I don't know if that needs to be defined or if that's going to be defined in when it's created.
That would, if I could, that was relevant when they were both going to be created at the same time. This
Okay,
motion
gotcha.
anticipates that the work group will go out of business and the committee will be created when the work group is done.
Oh, okay, so it will only be a committee and no work group at that point?
Unless we feel it needs to continue.
Yeah, because we still want to make sure that there's closed and open. And because committees also have to be published to the public and at a set time. And I think that's one thing for us too, that we have been able to flex on when we are available and have some flexibility on meeting and getting our deadlines done within a day or two. Because I know sometimes people are gone or Tuesdays are really busy with pledge and let's move it to Wednesday, et cetera. So for us, having the work group is still a lot more attainable as far as, like Susan said, adding a specific thing to the calendar. If you're only a committee, it's really in the language of how those things are presented. So you still have one public facing, but you also have the work group, not one or the other.
I believe the committee would have the option to spin off a work group as needed.
So we would still be our work group, but we're also creating the committee, which is the public facing, which would be you guys, Laura, Amber, Dean. Is that what I'm saying? But we still have the work group portion, and then we also have the committee portion, which is your public facing.
I thought the February deadline, I thought the February report was we were going to be done with the stuff that we need to do in this confidential matter. I mean, there's got to be a point where everything's public. But if the committee wants to create that kind of opportunity, it can do so. But when I asked when you're going to be done, I meant when we're going to be done, and I thought you said February.
Oh, done with the establishing of the ground rules of how, like Laura was describing what ground rules meant, meaning like how are things going to be laid out, not ground rules like a hierarchy, but just, overall ground rules, like how are we doing this? If someone's speaking, do we have a cutoff point? How long do we leave for discussion? Those types of things, like a timeline, an outline. So I guess I was under the impression that once those things were ready, then a committee could be created for those people who want to be meeting at that specific time, sharing the information with the public, but then the work group would still exist to actually get the other things, the research, the stuff like that put together, so that then when it needs to be presented, committee would do so. Amber and Laura and Dean. Does that make sense? That's what I was under the impression of.
Go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, so my impression is that the work group doesn't want to be public facing. So therefore, I mean, it's been working the way it's been working. It seems like the public facing part of the organization is where, should it choose, that's where ground rules, are particularly important if we're interfacing with the public or holding public meetings or so on and so forth. But the work group has been doing its work, I think, just fine. So my impression is that the priority would be getting the survey done, getting results of the survey done, compiling that, and then, presenting that so that that can shape whatever comes from it. So if there's a superstructure of committee, the committee can have work groups, and a work group exists to do a particular bit of work. And so there might be multiple work groups, like one might be a training work group that provides training to the station or training to volunteers, training to staff. There might be another work group that sets up affinity groups within the station so that folks from various backgrounds can meet together with privacy. And then, there are lots of things that could be work groups that interface with an overall committee. But I'm not quite sure about why there's suddenly a focus on ground rules for the work group to create when the work group has expressed this very strong desire not to be public facing, and part of
again, the ground rules are more than just public. But what I'm saying, Amber, then is you're saying that it's still going to be essentially committee and work group.
That's
not just committee, but you're saying that there may be, and then it may even stem to another work group or maybe another work group. But you're under that impression too, where there's committee, but there's also still existing work group / work groups. Okay.
Right. Work group.
That's what I was thinking too. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. And that way you preserve your nimbleness, you preserve your privacy, you preserve that, okay, we're working on products and projects here. And very specifically focused, whereas the committee as a whole is charged with setting priorities or overseeing those projects, overseeing those work groups.
Well, it wouldn't be overseeing, it would be working together. So if you get knowledge back from the public when you're having your meetings and you come to the work group and say, hey, this is some of the things that were expressed, then we can also start working on those things. And then we can bring them back to you to say, hey, this is what we found or what we've been working on. So it's still in conjunction with each other, not like an oversee, but that way we have a way we have one place where people are doing the work, but then we also have a place where you're gathering from the public, but then also expressing what the work is that we're doing, instead of holding a committee meeting always with the public where you can't actually just do the work. Does that make sense? So we would actually be working together and bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, of course we're working together, but in my view, there needs to be a coordinating function somewhere so that that work is identified, is prioritized, and then, the folks who are most enthusiastic about various projects or are most, best prepared to engage in various projects, engage in those projects as a function of a work group. And so a coordinating function would come from the committee, while work groups can very specifically focus on what they're working on. So one work group taking on multiple products or projects seems to put too much burden on a work group, from my perspective. And so, that's my view. It's different from your view, I think.
No, it's not. I was trying to make sure, because it sounded like Stu said that one would just be eliminated. Whereas what you're saying is, no, there would still be a committee and a work group, and possibly introducing another work group if it's a very specific need, like you said, like maybe what was I going to say? The training, specific training and microaggressions or something like specific. So yeah, that I think we're on the same page with that. But the language then that's being presented, just as long as it's being presented correctly, means in February, it doesn't eliminate the work group. It just means that, okay, now we've all established a point where now there's the committee as well. And so we're good to move forward. And then if the committee says, hey, you know what, we really need to establish this work group over here for the training, let's do that. Then you can still branch off and create those as needed. Additional work groups.
Yeah, but if that were the case, then why not establish the committee tonight?
Because we need this time to be able to get to that, to establish how those things are going to be laid out. Because like we said before, what is our time frame? What days are we going to meet? What days are those going to be? What are our deadlines? What are our time frames? So that's why we're getting these. We're able to have another meeting with the work group, including Laura, who's actually going to be on the committee once it's established. So we can bounce those back and forth and say, yes, this makes sense. If we're going to be meeting with the public on this day, we got a set work group. You guys, you have this much time to establish, to get this done, so that when we're public facing, we have what we need. So that's what our next meeting and the next meeting after that is going to establish. So when you guys are a committee, we already know what our time frame looks like, what your time frame looks like, which days you're going to meet, and then we can publish those meetings to the public.
So but that would be the work of the committee, right? To decide, here's when the committee is meeting, here's when we can interface with the public.
Well, it would be all of us bouncing off to say, hey, if that's the case, say I'm going to meet on, okay, we're a committee, we're going to meet Tuesday. Do you guys have the survey done? Not yet. We have the tech part that's actually working on that right now. So that's what the next meeting is for. So we're not taking up the board meeting tonight to establish all these things. That's why we're pushing it, so it's not established tonight, so we can get these things in order and then push it forward, and everybody can be on the same page.
Can I have Amber and Rebecca hold? Dean has had his hand up for a long time. Dean?
Okay. Well, I think both Amber and Adrian are getting to what I was assuming, the assumption that I was working on, that the work group may not be done in February, but there'll be a report that the committee can then take on to start the public phase of it. But the committee may, or the work group might not be done yet, and that's fine. I think I think that's understood here, and that we have that clear from both sides of it. So I don't want to complicate this now with potential things that might happen. I think we're going to get a report that will help set up this committee, begin to establish the public phasing of it, and the work group may well identify other things that they want to continue to work on, and they should. So there shouldn't be an automatic, you're done in February. That's not my assumption here, is that we are going to get some assistance on being able to take, when the committee can take this public, and that's their assignment, while the work committee can continue working on other issues. That's the way I see this. I can't anticipate what that report will be come February, except that we do want to be able to set up that committee to that they can then move on setting up the public part of it. So that's what the main goal of that February report is. And then if there are problems leading up to that, you'll report to us, and then we'll figure that out then. But it seems like you all said that part of it was doable. The role and charge of the work group after February is yet to be seen. Doesn't mean it's going to go away. It's might have a lot of other things to do. So let's get this report. Let's work on the report, and then we can see where we're at in February and take it from there. And I'm done.
Well, I'm not seeing a clear direction here. I mean, we have a motion in a second, but it's a complex issue, and I don't think the motion covers the detail. So Are you work on that, Stu, or may I propose that we table this until the February board meeting and see what the work group comes up with by February, and then have this discussion all over again in February about, do we form a separate committee or do we convert the work group to a committee? You know, those things can be tabled until February. I see a hand from Kai.
Could we maybe push it up to January? And if we need to defer again, then we can, but at least it's on the agenda. And then if we need to push again to February, then it gives them extra time. Because I don't see any problem or reason why we can't address it sooner. And then if they still say they need more time, then it's like, okay, well then, you know, we're not ahead of schedule. Now we're just exactly right on schedule. It's kind of like,
I haven't made a motion. I'm just discussing. So
yeah, I know. I'm just also discussing. Yes.
Stu, you're quiet, Stu. Stu, your audio is broken.
Kai effectively moved to refer to January, and I'll second that.
I'll agree with it
And
too.
And if Kai doesn't want to make the motion, I'll make the motion.
No, it works for me.
Makes sense. Let's do that.
I don't see us having more than one work group meeting before the February board meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was
Before the-
just looking at on my
Oh.
calendar to see if we have an opportunity to meet. So I mean, I would move to leave it at February, just with the because I'm not able to see the calendar as to when, and with the holidays and people coming and going, I just want to make sure that everyone's around. But that was my.
Well, fine. A point of clarification. When is the next meeting? Oh, that laugh.
Sorry.
No, we do have it scheduled.
It's scheduled for the 21st of January,
The board meeting.
the board meeting.
No, I meant to. Yeah, when's the DEI?
Yeah,
We don't know Laura's schedule. That was something we never even got into. We've tried to accommodate various people, and I think we need to look at it again because Ankur hasn't been to hardly any DEI meetings, and we're meeting at specific times based on his needs, but not seeing him. So I think the DEI work group needs to say, you know, what is the best time to meet?
our next meeting is scheduled for the 14th of December.
With a
Can
question
everyone-
mark.
Make
Yes.
that? Can everyone here make that?
I can.
What time is it?
That is also the 14th of December.
That's also the finance.
Also, the
committee.
finance committee meeting. I will kill myself if I have to do two of these in a row. Seriously.
Oh, wild. Okay.
Because one is right after the other. I'm not doing it.
Well, I'll send out an email tonight and we will figure out our next meeting.
Yeah.
Can
So
you
with,
please
with
add
that,
me
with that
onto
being
this
said,
particular?
with that
Thank
being
you.
said, can we just leave it for the February? And if we happen to be prepared for January, we can say, hey, we knocked it out
Oh,
early.
second hand.
Laura, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I would like to, when we revisit this in January, I would like to have a report ready with a timeline and a list of the all of the items that the work group is working on, because it's been made clear that it's not just the survey. So what are the things that the work group's working on? And it doesn't have to be, you know, it's not going to be the perfect timeline, but let's have some sort of an indication as to how long you think it's going to take for, you know, for these things to get done.
So there was a motion to table until the February meeting. Did somebody second that?
I will second that.
I think you made the motion, Kai.
No, wasn't that Rebecca to February?
I don't know, but I'll second if it was.
Great, we'll just move the order.
Yeah, I got it. First or second. Just put me where you need to put me.
Okay.
So, and Google tells me that I didn't type a complete sentence here. So the motion before us now is to table until February board meeting. It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed say
Aye.
no.
No.
Are there any other no votes? The motion carries.
So is a report going to be required at the February meeting? I'm unclear on that.
No, we're just going to table this discussion until February. And if the work group is still not ready to make a recommendation or a report, well, I don't know.
No, I see. I just can't abide by that. We've been
Our
dragging
plan
our
is to
feet on
do it.
this.
Our plan is to do it as much as possible, though, Laura. That's what we're going to knock out in our meetings.
So, so that we're asking the work group to make a report at the February meeting.
We're expecting one.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll accept that. I could accept.
And the report to me could ask for more time depending on where we
Yes.
are and the various things we're taking on. It isn't a report of here's where we are, we're handing it over. But I do expect that we will have a report, Laura, and it will report along the different things that we've started and where we are with them.
So what I'm looking for is a report of the projects that you're working on and how an estimate of the amount of time it's going to take to finish them.
Right. I think that's what we're planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, with that clarification, the motion passes to table until the February meeting, at which time we'll get a report from the work group.
I mean, if you guys feel like you have to give a directive to the work group, but we're here and that's our plan. You know, you don't have to tell us to prepare a report. We will prepare.
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
But
We're not going to tell you to do it. We expect one though, and you all said you're going to do it anyway, so it's cool. We're on the same page.
That completes the work on our agenda, believe it or not.
I actually have one more item, Dave.
It doesn't.
And it just came to me during this meeting, and I would have brought it up for the December agenda, but I realized that the December meeting is rather late. And I would like to propose the usual annual $100 bonus for all of our employees, full and part-time, who aren't already receiving a year-end bonus. It's something that we've been doing for years, at least since we've been financially stable. So I'd like to propose that.
Second.
Second.
Great.
Doug,
Stand
how many
by.
people-
Stand by.
How many people is that?
6, isn't it?
5 or 6? That's fine.
Yeah, 5 part-time and 2 full-time, 7 people.
Cool.
Who are the 2 full-time, Doug?
Adrian and Aaron.
Oh, that's
We don't
right.
need to get into that right now. Let's call the vote.
That's right.
Who seconded?
We are in a public meeting.
I did. Or Stu did, one of us did.
Second by acclamation.
All in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The motion carries. Is there any other business?
I just want to correct one thing on my LSDD report, where
Okay.
it reports the earnings for the Family Feud. There's a double count in there. So the total earnings, I was misreading what the numbers that Karen had given me. So we did not make $12,000. We made close to $9,000.
Okay, thank you.
Just correcting that.
Thank you.
And I'll correct it in the report. You know, I'll
Thank you.
put that correction in there.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Happy Thanksgiving next week, everybody.
True.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Are there any no's?
No, I'm a
Come
no.
on, we could keep going, guys.
I'm
You wanna-
going. I gotta
You
go
want
to-
to keep your night on? If you want to
Peace
stay up
out.
late tomorrow,
The
we have
motion
a
carries.
we have a DJ spin at Crystal Corner tomorrow night for you night owls. I know you stayed up late tonight, but 9 with Kayla Cush and Cooper Talbot.
Great.
That's cool.
Good
Thank
night.
you.